All right, I think we are live everywhere. Okay, so today's purpose, today's video, today's thing, if you guys are listening to this on Blast, welcome. Let me get some more. That sounds better. That's a little bit better. How's that sound? Yeah, it sounds okay. Okay. Good enough. Let me turn that down a bit. Yeah, that sounds okay. Okay. Boom. Boom, 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 boom. So, today we are talking about how to use your iPad to perform with Eurorack. So I've done this once live. I'm doing it again this weekend live. Well, hopefully everything works. I was just having issues trying to get both the HDMI connected from the iPad and the audio connected to the iPad. So that's fun. Other than that, though, I mean, it generally works. I've had no issues until today with it lately. I tried this a while back. I actually have one of my first videos on this channel was me messing about with using the iPad and talking about how to do it. So I'm going to kind of revisit that today and talk through it. So thank you guys for checking this out. Where are we? Let's play a little bit of music first, and then we can get into it. Let's just do some sick beats. Cool. Yeah, so that's just a quick demo, something I'm working on, mostly on the fun side for my performance this Sunday. Obviously, very, very simple. There's nothing to it from an audio perspective, sort of. I mean, from a kind of composing perspective. Um, so how is it all working, you might ask? Enterprising people want to know. Let's see. So all of the sequencing is happening with the Nerdseq. Uh, so I'm not using the iPad to sequence. I could if I wanted to. I'd have to change some modules out to do it, but it's certainly possible. Um, the iPad is handling all of the mixing. So like literally I have every input and most of the outputs from the ES-9 occupied. I have a stereo drum bus, the Manus as one voice, the Basimilus as another voice, the Rings as a third voice, and then a pad coming from the brand new Nobula Polycinematic, which sounds awesome. Would recommend. It sounds really good. Big fan. And all of those are being routed into the expert sleepers. The expert sleepers is also acting as sends and returns too. So I have a send going to the 100 grit for the drum bus. Actually, that's coming from the Cosmics, but the return is going into the expert sleepers ES9. And I also have a send going into the data bender. So, and then, finally, and then I have essentially an insert, quote unquote, on the outboard rack, which is the yeah. Do I have that backwards? No. I have to think about that. To check my patching. Sorry, lost my train of thought. I have. Oh, that's right. I have it on a send. I might change that. But we'll talk about that in a second. So I have on a send right now the Desmodus Versio and the Performer. And that's why I had this all the way up. And I can turn down the regen because I do not need it to be infinite. So let's look at how all of that routing actually looks in AUM. Boop. Okay, so if you guys are not familiar, this is AUM. Is there a quick way? Here, let me switch back here for a second. I want to see if I can turn on showing the touch points of what I'm actually poking so it's not super confusing to follow along. Oh, you know what? I wonder if I... No? I'm not going to figure this out now. Let's go back to AUM. Okay. So essentially what I've done is I've turned my iPad into a giant mixer. And the way I do that, sorry, is with AUM, which I think it's just Audio Unit Mixer, I think is actually what it stands for. And what AUM is essentially is a very, very powerful, very modular-esque mixing controller. You can do a lot with it. I'm not doing a lot with it at the moment. It looks like it's complicated, but it's actually just a lot of repetition. And basically all it's doing is mixing. And you can tell it's not complicated because up here in the, I can't really point, but in the upper right corner, you see that DSP indicator by the battery. Using audio processing apps consumes DSP resources, just like it would on a normal computer. And I am not using that many audio processing units on the iPad. Almost every effect, with the exception of like EQ and compression, is happening in the synth, right? I have all of these fun effects. Why not use them? I'm really just using the iPad to do a lot of the unglamorous mixing tasks. And that's predominantly to save space in the rack. So essentially what we have is we have a whole bunch of channel strips. Each one of these is a channel strip. And I have two mix buses that I'm using. And the summing, you can see there's mix bus B and mix bus A. Here, this is A, this is B. And I am basically splitting my drums and my melodic stuff into two different buses. And there's probably other ways to do this. That Esser is going to annoy the shit out of me. Off. Turn off. There we go. Okay, that hopefully sounds way more natural. Maybe. Maybe not. How about that? There we go. Does that sound normal? Kind of. I give up. Anyway, okay. So I have my percussion going to one bus, and then my melodic stuff going to the another bus. And the reason I split it up that way is that I can sidechain. I can sidechain my kick against the rest of the melodic bassy stuff. So that's neat. How does that work, you might ask? So let's look at our routing. So I have my kick going out to the B bus, which is my drum bus. Oh, that's right. I am using the. Am I really? Oh, I'm using it for the kick. That's right. Okay. Sorry, totally losing my train of thought. The kick is going out to the B bus, and you can see there's this compressor effect on it. So if I look at that, it's a sidechain source. I don't know if you can see this, but if I click here, I can choose it to be a source or an output. And I'm choosing it to be a source, output to the compression bus 1, which is separate from the AUM buses. This is an app called Four Pockets FX Compressor. It's just an AUM plugin. And it's just a decent compressor. There's nothing too fancy about it. You know, it does the job. The sidechaining stuff is really cool though. So, like I said, this is the source of the compression, and then the output of the compression is on bus A before it goes to my output bus. And bus A, I have it set up to be everything melodic. So rings, the BIA, which I'm using is kind of like an alternate bass voice, the pad from the Nobula, the Manus Eteritas is going into this as well. All of that is going out bus A and then being sidechain compressed from the kick. So let's play that and we can solo this so we can hear what that sounds like. So let me play the kick. There we go. I'll just play the kick. Let me play the pad, because the pad makes it really clear. So now with the compression, the kick is coming through fine. And you can kind of hear the ducking, which is the intent, right? You're, ducking it. So dumb. You're ducking the melodic stuff to basically let the kick come through, to give the kick space. So if I solo, no. I gotta figure out the soloing chain here. Solo you. There we go. You can hear it. So that is the sidechain compression happening. If I turn off, now we don't hear it anymore. And it sounds weird to hear it by itself, because you're not really meant to hear it that way, but if I turn off the soloing, it disappears completely because the kick is covering it, which is the intent. So that's really the one special sauce that I'm currently using the iPad for from a mixing perspective, is the sidechaining. I'm going to keep the pad going, but I'm going to kill the drums. Just because it sounds nice. Okay, maybe not. Maybe it's a bit loud. So there's a whole bunch of other stuff on here, and I'll talk through it. So AUM has a lot of built-in stuff, and you can tell they're built-in because they have the same kind of iconography. Like these sends are the same. The panning. I think that's kind of all I'm using. Sends and pans. Yep. And the ones that are not built in, those are the ones that actually have like the app icon. And so predominantly I have 3 apps that I'm using that aren't just built-in effects right now. And they're nothing too crazy. So the first is another 4 pockets one called Analyze, or Analyzer FX. And it's literally, I just use it as a tuner, which is super handy because I can throw it on whatever channel I care about, make sure everything's in tune before I start up. And just confirm that everything is, tuned the way I want it to be. It does a whole bunch of other stuff as well. Let me play something. I have it on the bass. So there's the tuner going, but I can also do frequency analysis. Right, you can do all sorts of cool stuff. You can do peak detection. So this is like a nice little visualization app. There's other ones out there too, but that one was like in a bundle for like super cheap, if I remember right. And it does exactly what I need, which is be a tuner 99% of the time, and then the other whatever percent of the time, if I want to like look at something specifically, I can pull it up. But so that's one app. We already showed you the compressor. The final one, which you can see is almost on every channel, is the audio damage channel strip, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is a noise gate, an equalizer, a compressor, and then input and output level adjustment with a bypass, 3 band EQ, nothing fancy, and a decent compressor, and that's really all I need, right? Like I can do some light EQ just like I would on a mixer. I can throw it on whatever channel I care about, and I don't have to worry about it. Now, you don't have to buy it. I think it was like $5 maybe tops, but AUM also has a whole bunch of its own apps to do this, or like little inserts that you can add. So filter and EQ, there's a parametric EQ, low shelf, high shelf, low pass, high pass, all that fun stuff. dynamics. You can have clipping, saturation, peak limiting, all of that. But there's also this whole world of all of these fun audio apps that I'm not even using for my purposes right now. Stereo widening, ChannelStrip, filter, distortion, chorus, reverb, everything you can think about. There's decently priced iPad apps that act as plugins that you can use. So, like I said, for my purposes, I'm just using the ChannelStrip app for the most part. The intent to be that I want the quote-unquote authenticness of the Eurorack to be here, and I don't want to be like adding a whole bunch of extra stuff with the iPad. Now, I'm sure there's probably people out there that saying using the iPad at all is cheating. Fine, don't care. It makes my life easier. Yeah, so let me switch back to the rack. Take me back to the rack. So performing with it, let me show you a cool thing that I got. Boom. Look at this. So this I bought off Amazon. I think it was $50 maybe. And what it is a ball mount iPad holder, which is super chill, super convenient. And what I did, so this is a case I got from Case from Lake. I've already tattooed it with a whole bunch of stickers, so why not take it a step further and drill holes in it? But you can kind of see on the end here, this little metal mounting point, which is just a ball. So like if I don't want it on the case, it's pretty low profile. It's on the top of the case, so it's not going to like, if I want to set the case down, it's not going to get in the way. But what I can do is I can unscrew this and fairly easily stick it on the end of the ball head. I say fairly easily. There we go. Boom, 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 boom. Tighten it down. And there we go. And now I have a very, very solid, like this thing is not moving. And I can throw my iPad right in front of my face. I can center it. I can put it, you know, whatever way I want. Like that, maybe. I'm not going to move the iPad because it's all wired in and I don't want to mess up my already weird connections. Tighten this down, tighten everything down. And like, that's not moving for the purposes of like what I'm doing. And I have a piano stand that I'm using to hold everything. So now I have one stand for everything. The iPad is right in front of my face. For the mixing, I can monitor with the iPad. All of that fun stuff. Let's talk about recording. So, boom. One of the cool things you can do with AUM is you can record your whole performance, and not just the stereo out, but I can record every channel, not just the inputs and outputs, but every channel of the mix. So this is really neat. So I can arm all of the recording. Boom. Whoops. And then I can record. And I get all of my audio. Just play everything. There's some audio, right? Let me stop this. And now if I go to my files, recordings, hey, look, there's all of those files, and they keep the labels of whatever you label the channels. So I know what stuff is. I should probably name the master tracks, but that's neat, right? Like I can play back everything. So that's cool. And then if we look, these are recorded as 4800 hertz. Oh, sorry, 48K, 24-bit, right? I can up this if I wanted to, depending on your audio interface. It goes up. This one I think goes up to 96K. I don't care about that. I'd rather have the lower latency. and I get all my audio. And I can record my whole live performance. I can keep the stereo mix if it sounds good, or I can take the stems back out and remix it, do whatever I want with it. The thing to note is that it does record with all of the effects, if that's something you want or something you don't want. So like in Ableton, for example, if you are recording audio and then adding effects on the chain after, it's non-destructive in a sense because it's not, I believe this is true, but your straight audio is not really being touched until after the fact by whatever effects you have on it. Now you can then subsequently record the output of those tracks on separate tracks. I think this is a little bit simpler, but it does mean that your decisions on like the apps and the mixing you use is baked into your recording audio. Now you could go crazy and do like, there are a couple ways to do this, right? But the effect order matters. So you could do, like, you could have a separate bank of recording channels. So like, let's say I wanted to set that up. Let me add a new channel, no output. Let's say, well, there's a couple ways to do this. One, I could just record the straight inputs. So let's say I wanted to record this, which I think is the drums, if I remember right. Yep. So I could record just this channel. Right, so now that's just that. And if I look at my files, my recordings, yeah, channel 14. So that is my raw, unmixed recording of that audio input. And it's duplicated, right? This audio, because I don't have it going anywhere, is not part of the mix. So we're not, when we're listening to it, you know, when I'm playing now, we're not hearing this because it's not part of the mix. I don't have it going anywhere, but I'm still able to record it. So that's super handy. The other way you could do it, let's say you wanted to, I don't know, let's say you had a group of tracks. We could set this up to have a mix bus. Let's just call it Mixbox K. Sure, why not? I could, let's say I wanted to send my Nobula to that bus. So I could say bus send, go to bus K, boom, send it full everything. This is after my channel strip. Let's say I wanted to send it before the channel strip. I don't think this channel strip is actually doing anything, but it is there. So this is a little bit of a hypothetical. Now I can record this bus K. Let's record something else. Let's record rings onto this bus as well. Bus send, bus K. We're going to also put this before any sort of effect. Let's not arm everything. Boom, boom, boom. Oops. Okay, so now we're only going to record the bus. Let me play these so we know that they're working. We can start our recording. It's recording. And trim the volume a bit. Let me play the drums too, just so we know that that's not being included. But I think you get the idea. I stop my recording, and I go back to my files. Oops. Here we are again. So that's cool, right? And that's all pre-fader from the mix fader now because of where the ordering is on the send, right? We are sending to bus K pre-fader, and then the output is going from the bus send on bus K all the way to our bus K output to nowhere, but we're recording it. So that's all super neat. So now I can have pre-fader stems, if you will, not the individual tracks, but actual stems, because I'm busing things together before they're being recorded. And I can capture any which way I want to store my performance. I can capture the main output. I can capture the individual tracks. I can create recording send buses. I can do all sorts of fun stuff with that. All with AUM. Let's see. Sorry, I don't have my computer in front of me, so I'm peeking around to the chat. Thank you guys for watching. If you guys are tuning in, much appreciated. This video will be up afterwards. But if you guys do have questions now, please let me know. Happy to go through more stuff. So with respect to live performance, one thing that I will say is kind of a pain point with AUM is how much screen real estate stuff takes up. I kind of want to reach out and see if they can come up with a condensed view that's like just faders and does not show anything else, because I think that would be super useful. Because if we look at like full pages, each page, each view on here can only show me 5 things at a time. So that's 1, 2, 3, 3 quote unquote pages of stuff. And you can set up bookmarks to make it easier to kind of jump around. So let's say I bookmark this channel, and then I bookmark this channel, and then I bookmark, I guess it would be this channel. So now I can go to my bookmarks, and I can jump quickly, which is not bad. It's not great, but it's not perfect. I can jump around pretty easily. There's a home button too. I can close that. I can maybe just leave this open. It does cover stuff, but it's there. So having a condensed view would be super nice, maybe to have either more channels vertically, double it, right? If you think about all of this empty kind of space between the channels, if I don't necessarily care about, after I set up the apps and stuff like that, I'm not in a live performance going to be opening them, at least me anyway. So being able to squish all of the channel strips and the faders together so I can just control the fades more directly. That would be nice. But it works. And for the most part, like, I am not, and maybe this is a limitation of the app and it's worth calling out, but the touchscreen is, it's not perfect, right? It's a bit fiddly. And if you're trying to like perform on your synth and then jump up and like grab some fader, right? There's nothing to grab. So you're touching the panel, you're trying to figure out your way out. The interface, so the app we're looking at is the AUM app, and then the audio interface is the Expert Sleepers ES-9 up here in the corner. It's about, where's my ruler? I think it's 14 HP? 14 or 16? I don't know where my ruler went. Anyway, so all of the audio is coming over USB to and from the iPad. The Expert Sleepers ES-9 is really nice because it has a headphone out and a main out as well. Let's see other questions. Touch performance apps. I have not. So I have GeoShred. I have not messed with it. There's a separate topic that I want to cover in the future, and I'm going to try to cover maybe after I'm done performing with the synth this week, which is, what if you do all of the audio generation in the iPad and you use the case for effects, right? Because with the ES-9, we have this, we have 8 different Eurorack level outputs and a whole bunch of inputs. So we can get real fun and send a whole bunch of audio, all sorts around the case with cool effects like data bender and the Versio stuff. and whatever, right? Whatever you want, the performer, filters, blah, 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 right? But you can have your synth engine and all your sequencing in your iPad with all of the cool iPad synth apps that exist, and just use your Eurorack for effects or any combination thereof, right? Like you can do a whole bunch of stuff, you know, kind of marrying those two. So that's definitely, the GeoShred app is pretty neat. If you guys are not familiar, it is, I believe it's a kind of physical modeling synth that is MPE supported. So it has a kind of, actually I can probably pull it up. I think you can host it, right? We'll eject it for now. Can I search? Yeah. GeoShred. Let me turn this way down and we'll send it to you. So this is a very simple demo here, but this app basically uses the kind of force tuning, almost like the Linstrument, which I actually have down below, which would be cool to hook up to it. But and that's all coming through my rack right now. So you can do all sorts of fun stuff with that, right? Like that can go crazy pretty quickly. For example, if I send it out to, yeah, let's put it through the 100 grit. Why not? Why not? So rather than going to this, I'm going to send it to hardware output 9. And now, if I open up, so that is GeoShred going through the 100 grit, which is sick. So that's something that I want to experiment with, which is basically, can I mess around with using all of these neat synth apps within the iPad, either sequencing them with things like AUM or pulling up like Cubase or something like that, and then using the Eurorack as like the ultimate effects system, and like put it through beads, put it through reverb, put it through whatever you want, right? And then modulate it all with all of the fun, you know, hands-on controls with the rack. So that would be a fun thing to try. I'll probably do that in a future video. Cool. So anyway, I think I was talking about mixing while performing. I tend to be a kind of set it and mostly forget it. And I think the iPad, because the touch controllers are not, super perfect to try and precisely touch something and fade it up and down, doesn't lend itself well to that, personally. Now, what you could do is you could just put a hardware controller, a MIDI controller attached to it. The MIDI control routing within AUM is super powerful. I don't have much MIDI stuff connected right now, but right, you could connect a hardware fader, and maybe it's just a small one, maybe it's a big one, maybe it's whatever you want, right? Connect it to AUM, set the controls up in AUM for the channel strips to be able to control the channels, right? You have MIDI controls possible over each channel strip. You can control the parameters in the apps themselves for the most part, for the AUM apps. So you could come up with a separate MIDI control scheme that was hands-on control for your iPad, separate from your Eurorack, or you could get super crazy and use some of those fader bank modules that have MIDI out, send that MIDI to your iPad, and then use your Eurorack hardware controller to control the MIDI on the iPad, right? Like, you can go nuts. It's super powerful. Let's see, any other questions? No, all the same stuff. Let's see. Let's talk about connectivity. So I have on my iPad, which you guys can't see because it's off here in the corner, maybe very carefully tilt my camera a bit. There's the iPad. Whoa, not the greatest angle, but I have a USB cable back here going from the ES-9. Ooh. What did I do? Oh. Don't fade to black me, please. There we go. Whoops. Hitting the wrong button. USB cable going to the ES-9, which is going, I have a little tiny USB hub back here. I gotta be careful to not knock the HDMI connection out. And that is taking the ES-9 connection and power to my iPad. So my iPad stays charged while it's docked. Actually doesn't look like it's charging at the moment. Well, anyway. And then HDMI, all that fun stuff. So all of that is going to the iPad. Getting a reliable a reliable USB-C hub is a must, I think. I had issues when I was first doing this with the USB-C hub that was buggy, and the iPad would disconnect from the ES-9 randomly. I have not had any issues with that happening since I got this hub. The other important thing to look out for is high quality USB-C cables as well. Not all USB-C cables are made equally, and some of them are straight garbage and will introduce some noise. I have had issues in the past with the ES-9 being a little bit noisy. I think it's mostly in the headphone out, and it has mostly to do with what USB-C cables you're using. For the most part, I have not seen that translate into the actual recordings or the main out. So things to keep in mind. Using just MIDI MPE from the GeoShed and something like Poly and Poly 2, for instance. Yes, definitely. I have the FH2 as well over in my crazy big monster case over here. That can also do MPE stuff. I think there's a separate, so right now all we've been talking about today is audio. In a future video we can talk about MIDI sequencing and how you, right now, right, we're talking about audio out from the iPad in, but iPad out MIDI to Eurorack in can go real crazy too. There are a whole bunch of sequencing apps, both ones that are plugins, but also ones that are, like a full DAW, basically. And you can send your MIDI, do all that fun stuff. Let's see. I think that about covers it for today. If you guys have any final questions, let me know. I'm going to be closing down here in a minute to go get some food. But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I really like this setup because it reduces the amount of stuff you have in your case, which is case real estate is limited. iPad app real estate is not. So if I look at something like, boom, let me pull it over. I have the performance mixer. So there's a couple advantages and disadvantages to doing the iPad mixing versus the performance mixer. First off, hands-on controls on the performance mixer, really great, right? You got physical faders, physical knobs, all that fun stuff you can, push, turn, move. All of that, very hands-on. You have CV control over a lot of things that you can't, you can do it, but it's tricky. But you can CV control stuff really easily using the rest of your modules to control your mixer. That's all fun. Advantage iPad. you get way more control, right? All of this routing, the addition of apps to do EQ, right? Like you can get a kind of studio grade live performance with the iPad because you're using studio grade EQ and mixing. There are a lot of really good, really powerful iPad apps, both budget friendly and not. One that I really like is called Mixbox. Mixbox is also cool, but that's not what I was thinking of. Mixbox is basically a 500 series emulator. So you can have a whole bunch of effect modules. Oh, you guys can't see my screen. There we go. You can have a whole bunch of effect modules on your iPad, and you can chain them together. All right, I can have distortion. I don't know what channel this is on. Oh, it's on the 100 grid. Let's put it on something a little more reasonable. Sure, we'll put it on rings. Oops. Let me just pull up a preset. Sure, let's hear what that sounds like. Turned it off for start. Ain't that cool? So note the DSP hit, though, to run that. Just something to keep in mind. So yeah, so I mean, like there are some really powerful effects. Like this is on the Mixbox is on the expensive side. I think when I bought it, it was $50. It does include like a butt ton of plugins and effects, and you can obviously like, there's a whole bunch of presets. You can, you know, swap stuff around. Let's hear what this sounds like. Oh, sounds awesome. Love it. Right? So all that stuff is super powerful. And you can have a field day just throwing effects on stuff. And like, man, you can do some cool stuff with that. Like I said, your limitation is DSP. So like the ChannelStrip app that I'm using basically uses next to no DSP, which is why it's nice to have on every channel. That Mixbox app starts to consume DSP pretty quickly. I've personally never maxed it out, but I've also never tried. You definitely can, and that's when you start to hear audio dropouts. So if you're performing live, right, that's not something you want to be having. Now you can push it, right? Like essentially the limit is 100. Anything less than 100 is fine. So, you know, go crazy, right? If you're sitting at 98 DSP, you're perfect, right? Like it's still doing all the stuff. If you're floating at like 100, 101, that's when you're going to start to have issues. So, you know, depending on how complex your patching is or like what you're trying to do, right? Like maybe I just wanted to have the master bus have the Mixbox, right? Like that's only going to consume, you know, whatever 5-10% of my DSP because it's only one audio channel. right? Like there's nothing here, it's just a saturation, but right, that's pretty cool. You know, that's pretty powerful right there. You can have a like full mastering chain on your live performance. Ooh, excuse me. So like there's a lot of stuff you could do with that. Now, like I said, I'm intentionally, because the performance I'm doing, it is intended to be mostly pure. So I'm not doing that. I could if I wanted to. I will probably play around with that later. But I mean, like, it's nice to have, right? Like, so here's a question. Why would you use the iPad over, let's say, Ableton? I think that's a fair call out. I'm asking and answering my own question here. I think you could definitely get away with doing this with Ableton. I don't think there's not too much special sauce with the iPad itself. I will say the prevalence of there's two reasons I would say why you would want to use an iPad. One, AUM. My God, hands down. If you don't want to deal with the overhead of messing around with Ableton, AUM is super lightweight. It's very, very flexible. You can save profiles and stuff like that just like you would on any DAW and recall them very easily. And it does not have all of the overhead of having a DAW, right? Like both the like physical overhead of now you have to tote around this computer, but also like the UI overhead of like, here's all the sequencing stuff that I'm not really using. With AUM, it's super lightweight. That stuff is there if you want it, or you can ignore it, and it is always the right size, right? If you just wanted to have one stereo pair with a bunch of effects, it's right there too, right? Very easy. Two is all of the other apps, right? Like there are so many budget-friendly iPad apps that will let you do all sorts of fun stuff, right? Like these are just the audio ones that I have. There's a bunch. And this is like but a drop in the bucket. And what I'm starting to see is a lot of the like more well-known like plugin companies are starting to port stuff to iPad. So like one of the things I'm looking to get is the FabFilter plugin setup, which has like 8 or maybe not, maybe it's like 5 or 6, but it's like 5 or 6 FabFilter plugins for like $100 on the iPad. And yeah, it sounds expensive to spend $100 on iPad apps, but they're the FabFilter plugins, right? Like they're really good stuff. It's not like it's poor quality or cheaper or lessened because it's on the iPad. It's still just as good. The new iPad Pro, right, has like the full, M1 processor that the Macs have. So you can do some really powerful stuff. That said, like, I think a computer is equally as powerful, if not more. You can probably do more with Ableton if you don't mind having the Ableton UI. I think the iPad is physically smaller. Like I have an iPad Pro, but if you wanted to use like the new iPad mini, theoretically could do all of the same stuff. It might have a little bit more limitation with DSP processing, but if all you're doing is like lightweight mixing, and you could get away with a little tiny iPad mini just in front of you, and that would be pretty sick. And cheap too, right? Like the new iPad mini I think is $400 for essentially a digital mixer. That's pretty good. Man, I've been rambling for a while. I'm getting hungry. So I am not seeing any final questions in the chat. If you guys do have stuff, have other questions, drop them in the comments. I will ask and answer them as I see them. Cool. Hit that like and subscribe button, everybody. Smash it. Yeah, go out there, have fun. Hook up your Eurorack to your iPad and make some cool noise.